You've always been a dick to me, Cartman, and I'm not inviting you.
Cal, you don't understand. Casa Bonita is my most favorite place in the whole world. I'll just die if you don't take me, please.
Sorry, my mind's made up.
Well, fuck you, Cal. I don't want to go to your faggy birthday party anyway. I'd rather hang out at home than have to be around you and your Jew mom for a day. Kiss my balls, asshole. Dude, I totally didn't mean that, Cal. I really, really want to go to Casa Bonita.
Hey guys, we're going to be working on 3 background scenes. In the folder there are reference videos, isolated audio, character and background images, including mouthpieces for lip syncing, and side views that you will need for the series. We're going to be creating everything with references from scratch, except for the isolated audio. So go ahead and navigate through the folder and get yourself familiar with it, because we'll be using it quite often. Here's a brief overview of your references. First, we're going to open up a new scene. We want to delete the default cube by selecting it, pressing X. Now we need to import an image reference. So we do that by pressing Shift A, going to image, and selecting background. We are working with Y as depth, so let's position its rotation to X equals 90, Y and Z is 0, and set location to X and Y to 0, and Z to 1.4 meters. We set it to 1.4 so that we have it's set to a grid so that we have a main starting point. So with characters, whenever we go to set their positioning, we don't want them to go too high or too low. So our baseline for the floor for them, or any object for that matter in the scene, it's going to set at 1.4 as basically 0. We're going to set the camera to exactly the same position and rotation as the background reference shot. And the only thing that's going to be different on that one is we're going to set the Y location to be specifically 6.9258. Select camera and choose the green camera icon. For pass part out, set it to 1 with it checked to view only the scene to be rendered while looking through the camera view. Now we want to add a controller to the scene, and what this is going to do for us is essentially all the scene contents inside of it. We should be able to scale, move it around, move it in Y depth, that way we can position it properly to the scene. So go ahead and make a material and choose a color for this. I went ahead and went with neon green just so it was obvious that those are for the scenes. And also don't forget to periodically save it. So the basis in how this works is everything's going to be constructed out of flat plane meshes, essentially like the construction cutout style. So every single object, the background, every single part of the character is going to be made out of these flat planes, just changed in Y depth. And so we're going to start with the background in this scene, and we're just going to start with the wall and the floor. So let's go ahead and create a mesh for the wall, and we need to rotate it, so press RX90. So you'll also notice that when you put two planes in the same area, they kind of glitch out. And so with computer graphics, that's one thing that happens when they share the same common space. Or even if they don't, if there's not enough distance between them, this error occurs, it glitches, and it's trying to show both objects at the same time. And so it goes back and forth, and that's called Z fighting. And so the way that we prevent this, one of the quickest ways, and the way that this is going to be set up, is we're just going to change the wide depth of all the objects. Essentially, everything will be set up on its own layer, so to speak. And all we're really doing here is just stretching the meshes to fit the background, reshaping certain things, adding vertices, moving them around. This is essentially what you would be doing for the concept art. But our concept art is actually a finished South Park animation, so we're using those. And it's always good practice to name your hierarchy as you go, all the objects in it. For this particular style of animation, it becomes a little more critical, so just make sure that you're naming them as you go. And for those of you more new to Blender, if you hold Z as a hotkey, you can go and select wireframe mode, and then when you create the material, as you can see, if you press the color picker, you can click on the reference photo for that specific color to make that material that color. And to copy the wall object to also make it the floor object, you can hold shift and press D, and that duplicates it. And to scale the objects, you can press S on the keyboard and move the mouse to get the desired size. And if you only want to scale on one axis, then you can just press S and then either Z, X, or Y. And that works for the transforms as far as just the regular movement, the rotation, or the scale. So the rotation hotkey is R, S is scale, G is grab. And so for the picture frame on the background wall, what we're doing is we're just going to be doing rough Y placements. They're actually going to be to a specific scale for layers later, but for right now it's just enough for visibility, and those are going to be corrected later. So it's going to be the wall, the backing frame, and then the picture that's in it. And if you select the object, go into edit mode, then up the top left corner of Blender, you'll see three options, one for a vertice point, one for edges, and one for faces. And what that does is that changes how you select an object and what part of it. So I'll just finish sizing up the picture frame and the picture in it, and then I have to go back and rename a few things that I didn't. Also, if you see something suddenly reset back all of a sudden, I'm just going Control Z to go back, and to go forward to undo something that you redid, or to redo something that you undid, it's Command Shift Z on a MacBook. So hold Z and go back to wireframe mode, and we're going to start working on the couch. So press Shift A to add a plane, rotate it X by 90, scale it, and then go ahead and position it to the base corners of the object. Let's switch to edge mode so that we can pull the top portion up to the top side of the couch. So while the whole object is selected in edit mode, Press Command R to make loop cuts, to add more geometry. So I think it was 12 horizontal. So you can do Command R, type in the number, and then hit enter. So now that we have more geometry on it, we can go back to the point mode, and then we can select each vertex individually and manipulate it to at least a rough shape of the couch. We're going to do another loop cut, except vertical this time, and it should be about 12. Same process here, we're just going to add a material color and select the couch. Select the couch, press G and then Y to bring it forward past the flooring. Then go ahead and click the tool icon and search for subdivision modifier and set it to 2. Now that it's smoothed out, you can go ahead and go back in and adjust the intricate parts of the geometry to get it to a more appropriate shape. Make sure that you're only grabbing and scaling the objects on the X and Z axis and rotating only on the Y. Alright, so now we gotta make the legs for the couch. Shift A to add a plane, and then rotate X by 90, scale it down. You're also going to want these to overlap at least a little bit. It doesn't have to be very much, but like the legs need to be, since they're behind it, they need to stick up past where the couch is. Then we'll create a material, and then make sure you're in wireframe mode, and go ahead and use a color dropper to select the color. And we're going to need to select both of these in wireframe mode, and both of them together and pull them up. That way they're at the same Y depth, but they need to be brought between the couch and the floor. Then we need to go in and rename our objects. And with both objects selected, we want to press Ctrl J to join them as one object. So the only thing left for this scene is to make the bowl of chips. So Shift A to add a plane, scale it down again, center it, size it up. With the edge tool, we're going to take the bottom and scale it inward. With Command R, we're going to make 4 horizontal loop cuts. And then we're going to scale everything to fit. And we're going to be adding a subdivision modifier after this and setting it to 2 as well. And we need to make a new material for this and select the brown color from the bowl. Under the wrench tool, again, we're going to search for a subdivision surface modifier and set it to 2. And that's going to make the geometry a little bit weird, but we're going to add more vertical loop cuts and then kind of push them to the edges on the outer sides. That way it kind of keeps more of its shape, and we don't need to be that tedious about this. So every time that we go to add another plane object, it's going to set it pretty much in the same position, so that's why we keep having to adjust the Y depth. But right now this is just for us to view it. It's not actually set where it's going to end up. So press G and Y to pull it out in depth to where it's in front of the couch, and then we're going to add another plane, scale it, center it, same thing. This one's going to be the chips, and this one I forget how many loop cuts we're going to add vertically, but basically we're just going to drag all those points to make rough triangular chip shapes. Command R, and we're going to do, I think, 19 vertical. So the idea is just dragging each of these points to all of the points of the chips, essentially. And so like right here, you see how it crosses the line with that. Is like, we don't want that. That's gonna cause it to show up and render really weird on screen. Kind of like Z fighting. So you got to make sure that your points don't cross. So we need to make a material for the chips, and then select the with the color dropper, the yellow color. And then we're going to need to move it in depth. So press G and then Y to move in depth. And we want it situated between the couch and the bowl. So it looks like we got the basis of the scene pretty much done. There's a few more things that we will need to do to it, and later we'll go over doing the textures. All the little squiggly drawing marks that they put on the characters in the backgrounds, I'll go over that. Select all the objects we just made in the scene, and then hit Control A and apply rotation and scale. And then we'll do the same for the scene controller too. Now we want to deselect the scene controller, select everything in the scene again, select the scene controller last, and then hit Command P to object to set the parent. Now wherever we move or whatever we adjust to the controller of the scene, the whole scene moves too. And that allows us more control over the scene setup. And it can become kind of an eyesore or be in the way. So if it bothers you, the relationship lines, if you want to disallow it, if you go up to overlays at the top and then go down to relationship lines and uncheck that box, it makes them go away. Currently we don't have any intentional lighting in the scene, and there's a few ways you can go about this. So when you render it, you can see that it's not very well lit. So we can either do this with lighting, or all your materials, you can make them emission shaders. That way they emit light and there's technically no light needed in the scene. I didn't choose to go with light emission. I wanted to play around with the lighting myself just to see. I might switch back to it later, but we're just going to do some standard lighting right now, and we'll do some better stuff later before we render. So currently where we're going to land at with the lighting itself for the scene is the rotation is going to stay the same, but the location is going to be x is 0, y is negative 5.5 meters, and z is 1.4 meters. And that'll basically put it where the camera is. So the light source doesn't distribute well as is, and it's a little fuzzy and hazy in the middle. So what we're going to end up doing is going to all the materials of the objects, and we're gonna end up changing the roughness property to 1 on every single shader. So there's still a little bit of a haze with this when you go to the rendered, but back and forth it's not too different, so we can worry about that later, but at least it's a little more accurate. So the rendering settings are going to change, but currently just make sure you're in Eevee, and I just set the sampling rate for both to 300. So I'll push it a little and render it at a higher sampling rate, but it's not really necessary. I'll probably end up rendering it at 32, and if your computer's slow or you just prefer it that way, it's perfectly reasonable to just keep it lower. And under your output properties, just go ahead and make sure that it's set to 1920 by 1080p and that your resolution is set all the way up to 100. Okay, so this scene is pretty much done, so we'll just toggle off all the visibility in the hierarchy and start on the next one. Alright, so the next scene is the other living room shot towards a door with Cartman, and we're going to set these up exactly the same way, and everything is set up to the camera to fit it. So all these reference images are going to have the exact same location and rotation. So they're going to be set at 1.4 on Z, just rotated X 90, and everything else, zeroed out. Oh, and to pull up the transform window, just press in on the keyboard, and to close it, press in again. So we're going to be selecting the light and the camera. We're going to press Shift D to duplicate them, and we're gonna essentially set up the same shot just in a different area in Blender for each 3 scenes that we're making. So we're going to grab all the objects, the new ones, so the new reference of the living room with Cartman, the new camera, and the new light. We're going to press G on X, and we're going to move it 50. You can either do it manually that way, or you can press in for the tool and just type it in. We need to make another controller for the new scene. And so we're going to end up setting Z, the transform, to negative 1.2734. we want to press Control A and then apply its rotation and scale. Then we're going to grab it on X and move it 50 meters. Then we need to apply the controller material. In order to change which camera you're looking through in the viewport, you have to select the camera that you want to look through first. Go up to the top, click View on the drop down, go to Cameras, and then set Active Object as Camera. We're going to go ahead and set up the third scene. We're going to take the camera, the light, and the controller, and we're going to duplicate those, and we're going to shift it another 50 meters on X. So they're going to be separated, each scene is going to be separated by 50 meters, and this is just temporary. They'll all end up sharing the same position at one point. The placeholder, or the controller, that one can be duplicated because it's not attached to any object because it only has a reference image right now. Currently our cursor is set to where the first scene is. So what we're going to do, we're just going to disable the reference image, and then where that first one is, we're just going to go ahead and import the kitchen scene, that reference photo. We're going to set Z to 1.4 and the rotation as 90, 0, 0. And then we're just going to shift that down 100 meters on X. We're going to go ahead and build the kitchen scene first, and then the one with Cartman in it. And so we need to move the 3D cursor to the position just like how the other one was built. That way all the objects that we create are right there. We don't have to drag everything back and forth. And right here, I'm only switching the cameras just to make sure that everything's actually set up to the camera properly. Select the edge tool, and then on the controller, the very top portion, click that, and then hold Shift S, and then cursor to selected, and that's going to move your cursor to the proper position. Go ahead and deselect the controller, and then Shift A to add a plane, rotate it X on 90, and then we're going to essentially set up the same thing that we did for the other scene, is we're going to do the wall and then the floor. The majority of creating this scene is going to be stuff we've already gone over. If there's anything new, I'll do more narration, but a lot of it's repetitive, so just follow along. For this part, for the chairs, you're going to want to have your edge tool selected and then press E on the keyboard, and then you could extend out on X and drag it out to create more geometry. This scene is pretty simple, and it's mostly done at this point. Now we can start with the final living room scene. Just like before, we're going to select the edge tool, select the top of the controller, Shift S, hold it, and then select cursor to selected. We need to jump back over to the other scene for a moment and make sure that everything's named properly. And then we're going to have to set the controller. We need to apply all its rotation and scale. And then all the scene objects we need to set as a child to the controller object. In Blender, objects can have more than one material, and so if you press the plus icon and select, say, the face tool, you can select all the faces of the object that you want to be a certain color. When you have it highlighted under the hierarchy, you can go ahead and press the assign button, and it will make all those that material color. This part right here is kind of the only exception of rotating on Z, and it's to flip it 180 degrees so that you can reverse the image. Usually you're going to have to select all the geometry, all the vertices in edit mode, and then you're going to have to flip the normals in order for it to render proper. And you would flip them by pressing Shift in on the keyboard. Alright guys, so it looks like we got our scenes made up, so let's just make sure our controllers are good. When you're working with a whole bunch of different objects like this in a scene, it's a lot easier to just go into wireframe mode to select them, otherwise go into the hierarchy and select them individually. It appears that somewhere down the road we duplicated that on accident, so we gotta delete those. Well guys, you did it. Thanks for sticking around, and keep an eye out for the character creation that'll be next in the series.
Kiss my balls, asshole!